Here are 10 toxic Victorian beauty trends. You'll be shocked by what you learn. The Victorian era is shrouded in an aura of elegance, strict morals, and refined beauty. We imagine ladies in lush dresses, with perfect hairstyles and porcelain skin, as if they had stepped out of a pre-Raphaelite painting. Their images seem to us to be the embodiment of femininity and aristocracy. But behind this flawless facade lay a completely different reality, one that was dark and dangerous. The pursuit of beauty in Victorian society was not just a hobby, but a veritable tyranny that demanded daily sacrifices from women. The ideals of beauty at that time were inextricably linked to the idea of female weakness, fragility, and even morbidity. A woman was supposed to be an ethereal creature, far removed from the harsh realities of life and physical labor. The standard of beauty was synonymous with idleness and high social status, a demonstration that a husband or father could afford to support a creature that was completely useless from a practical point of view. Watch the video to the end to learn how ordinary face powder slowly and imperceptibly undermined the health of an entire generation of women. What if I told you that a deadly poison was sold in pharmacies as a beauty product? In the Victorian era, paleness was not just fashionable, it was a sign of aristocracy and refinement. Tanned skin was associated with physical labor in the open air. The lot of commoners, while interesting pallor, spoke of an idle lifestyle. To achieve this effect, women resorted to the most radical measures, one of which was the use of arsenic. Yes, the very same poison that in large doses leads to fatal consequences. In microdoses, it did indeed cause specific changes in the body. Arsenic destroyed red blood cells, which led to a deathly pallor of the skin. In addition, it gave the eyes a special, feverish gleam and the face a slight puffiness, which together created the image of a languid, fragile, and mysterious maiden. This effect was considered incredibly attractive. The most striking thing is that arsenic was sold completely legally, often in the form of so-called complex plates or arsenic wafers. Manufacturers assured that their product was completely safe and even beneficial to health. Advertisements promised not only a flawless complexion, but also the elimination of all skin imperfections. Women who started taking arsenic quickly became addicted. Abruptly stopping caused their appearance to deteriorate, their skin took on a yellowish tint, and fashionistas had to return to the dangerous treat. They became hostages to their own pursuit of the ideal. Thus, arsenic was not just a cosmetic product. It was a tool with which society shaped the right woman, beautiful, weak, and submissive. The price of this conformity was high, but few people thought about it in their pursuit of fashion. Are you ready to learn the truth about the most famous item of Victorian clothing? The corset was not just an item of underwear, but a true symbol of the era and the main tool for shaping the ideal female figure. Its purpose was to create a slim waist, high chest, and curvy hips, an hourglass silhouette that was considered the standard of femininity. Girls were put into corsets from an early age so that their bodies would be shaped correctly from the start. It was part of their upbringing, a way to teach future women discipline, self-control, and the need to sacrifice comfort for the sake of propriety. The corset was the physical embodiment of the social restrictions imposed on women. The lacing process was a daily ritual, often requiring outside help. Tight lacing prevented women from breathing freely, eating, sitting, and even moving. Any sudden movement could cause dizziness or fainting, which, however, was considered quite normal and even an elegant manifestation of female weakness. Constant wearing of a corset had serious consequences for the body. Internal organs shifted from their natural places, the rib cage was deformed, and the back muscles atrophied. Women became physically dependent on corsets. Without their support, they could no longer maintain their posture. This item of clothing clearly demonstrated the social role of women. It deprived them of their physical freedom, making them dependent and passive. A woman in a tight corset could not work, play sports, or even walk quickly. She was designed for slow walks and graceful sitting in living rooms. Despite the obvious harm, refusing to wear a corset was unthinkable for a respectable woman. It would have been perceived as a challenge to society, a demonstration of licentiousness and bad taste. Fashion was the law which had to be obeyed unquestioningly. Thus, the corset was much more than just clothing. It was an instrument of social control, the physical embodiment of the oppressed position of women, deprived of the right to their own bodies, comfort, and freedom. It shaped not only the waist, but also the consciousness. But while the corset changed the figure from the outside, the next trend destroyed women from the inside, using the most fashionable color of the era. Watch the video before the next chapter to find out how an ordinary dress could cause serious illness. What I am about to show you was deadly fashionable in the truest sense of the word. In the mid-19th century, a new, incredibly bright and saturated shade of green came into fashion. It was called Paris green, or Sheila emerald green, and instantly gained popularity among fashionistas. Fabrics of this color were used to make luxurious ball gowns, hats, gloves, and even artificial flowers to decorate hairstyles. The bright and durable pigment made it possible to create truly spectacular outfits that made their owners stand out at any social event. This color became a real hit of the season. However, behind the dazzling beauty of this shade lay a terrible secret. The secret of its brightness lay in the use of copper torsenite, a chemical compound containing both arsenic and copper. The dye was extremely unstable and easily flaked off the fabric in the form of tiny poisonous dust. A woman wearing such a dress was literally enveloped in a cloud of arsenic. The poison entered the body through the skin and respiratory tract. Fashionistas complained of nausea, headaches, skin irritation, and breathing problems, unaware of the true cause of their ailments. Not only the women themselves were at risk, but also everyone around them. Dancing in the ballroom, a lady in a green dress scattered poisonous dust around her, which her partners breathed in. Even furniture, upholstery, and wallpaper painted with the same pigment posed a serious health hazard. Green fever was yet another manifestation of how women's bodies became objects of fashion experiments. Women's health and well-being were not taken into account when it came to following the latest trends. The main thing was to make an impression, even if the price of that impression was exorbitantly high. Ultimately, after a series of high-profile incidents and an active press campaign, the use of arsenic dyes was gradually abandoned. But this trend has gone down in history as one of the darkest and most instructive chapters in Victorian fashion. It showed how beautiful and dangerous an illusion can be. What if I told you that women voluntarily deprived themselves of their sight in order to achieve a fashionable look? The Victorian ideal of beauty required women to have not only pale skin and a slim waist, but also a special look, languid, mysterious, and wide-eyed. It was believed that large, dark pupils gave the face an innocent and dreamy expression. To achieve this effect, fashionistas used eye drops containing Belladonna extract. This plant has been known since ancient times for its toxic properties. Its name, which translates from Italian as beautiful woman, speaks for itself. The atropine contained in belladonna causes paralysis of the eye muscles, leading to severe pupil dilation. The effect was instantaneous and impressive. The eyes really did become huge, dark, and shiny. The gaze acquired the very depth and expressiveness that poets sang about. However, there was a downside to this cosmetic trick. Dilated pupils stopped responding to light, which made being in the sun or in a brightly lit room extremely uncomfortable. Women saw everything in a blurry, out-of-focus way. But that was the least of her problems. Regular use of belladonna drops led to serious and irreversible consequences. Increased intraocular pressure and other complications could eventually lead to complete loss of vision. Despite the risks, women continued to use the dangerous drops. The desire to conform to the ideal of beauty and attract male attention was stronger than fear. Blurred vision and discomfort were considered a small price to pay for the admiring glances of suitors. This trend once again emphasizes what a Victorian woman was supposed to be, an object of contemplation. Her own comfort and even health were irrelevant. The main thing was how she looked, not how she saw the world. It is symbolic that, in striving to make her gaze more attractive, a woman literally lost the ability to see reality clearly. She plunged into a foggy, blurred world, which was entirely consistent with her role in society. The role of a creature far removed from real problems. Doctors warned about the dangers of belladonna, but the beauty industry continued to sell its extract in elegant bottles. This was yet another example of how commerce and fashion ignored women's well-being. An attractive image was a commodity that had to be sold at any cost. Do you think modern people are willing to take similar risks to keep up with fashion trends? In the next chapter, you will learn what sacrifices women made for snow-white skin using even more dangerous substances. The ideal of porcelain, perfectly white skin was one of the pillars of Victorian beauty. It symbolized purity, innocence, and most importantly, belonging to the upper class. To achieve this flawless whiteness, women used powders and creams known collectively as Venetian whitewash. The main ingredient in these cosmetics was lead carbonate. This substance provided a thick, even coverage that hid any skin imperfections, freckles, age spots, and scars. The face was transformed into a perfect white canvas. Women applied a thick layer of lead white, creating a mask effect. This mask not only made the face fashionably white, but also completely erased any lively facial expressions. Emotions were considered a sign of vulgarity, and an impassive, doll-like face was the height of propriety. The problem was that lead is a toxic heavy metal. It slowly but surely penetrated the body through the skin, accumulating and causing chronic poisoning. The consequences were devastating, although they did not manifest themselves immediately. In addition, lead destroyed the very skin it was supposed to adorn. Over time, it became gray, dry, and wrinkled. To hide these new imperfections, women had to apply an even thicker layer of whitewash, falling into a vicious circle. Removing such thick makeup required aggressive products containing mercury or other corrosive substances. This caused additional damage to the skin. As a result, a layer of flawless white paint hid an emaciated and prematurely aged face. This trend clearly shows how artificial and deceptive the Victorian ideal of beauty was. It required women not just to emphasize their virtues, but to completely hide their true nature under a layer of toxic makeup. They were supposed to be perfect statues, not living people. Society demanded that women be perfect pictures, works of art. No one was interested in what was hidden behind this picture or the price at which it was created. Her physical and emotional state was secondary to her appearance. Lead white is a grim symbol of an era when beauty was synonymous with self-destruction. Women willingly applied poison to themselves in order to meet society's cruel standards. It was a quiet, daily war for the right to be considered beautiful, in which there were no winners. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of Victorian cosmetology. In addition to lead, Victorian beauties had another extremely dangerous substance in their arsenal: mercury. It was used in ointments and lotions to whiten the skin, remove freckles, and treat acne. Mercury does indeed have whitening properties and is capable of suppressing melanin production. Cosmetics based on it had a quick and noticeable effect, making the skin lighter and smoother. Advertisements presented them as a miracle solution to all skin problems. Manufacturers assured buyers that their products were completely safe. Bottles of mercury preparations looked elegant and were sold in reputable pharmacies. Nothing told women that they were buying a powerful poison. However, mercury, like lead, easily penetrates the skin and accumulates in the body. Chronic mercury poisoning has even more serious consequences. The nervous system is the first to suffer. Women who regularly use such cosmetics experience mood swings, irritability, depression, and memory loss. In severe cases, tremors developed and coordination was impaired. Again, these symptoms were often attributed to female nature. In addition, mercury had a devastating effect on the kidneys and liver. Prolonged use led to irreversible changes in internal organs. Beautiful skin was achieved at the cost of destroying the entire body from within. The pursuit of the ideal was so strong that women were willing to turn a blind eye to obvious signs of illness. They believed advertising and fashion magazines more than their own feelings. Public approval was more important than personal well-being. This trend once again shows how vulnerable women were in Victorian society. They were not only victims of fashion, but also victims of unscrupulous manufacturers who profited from their desire to be beautiful. The lack of regulation in the cosmetics industry allowed them to sell toxic compounds with impunity. Women were completely deprived of reliable information. Their health was in the hands of merchants and fashion dictators. They were merely consumers who had to buy what they were offered without asking unnecessary questions. Have you ever encountered dubious cosmetics promising instant results? In the next chapter, we will talk about how the pursuit of volume and shape in clothing led to tragedy. In the middle of the Victorian era, a new design replaced the numerous petticoats, the crinoline. It was a frame made of steel hoops or whalebone that created a huge bell-shaped silhouette of the skirt. The crinoline allowed for incredible volume, which was considered the height of elegance. Dresses with crinolines were impressive, but extremely impractical. The width of the skirt could reach several meters in diameter, which made passing through doorways, sitting on a chair, or riding in a carriage a real challenge. A woman in a crinoline took up a huge amount of space, which symbolically emphasized her importance as a decoration of society. However, the main danger of the crinoline was not its bulkiness. The light fabrics of the time, such as muslin, calico, or taffeta, were extremely flammable. A huge, air-filled skirt could catch fire from the slightest spark from a fireplace, a fallen match, or a candle. Cases of dresses catching fire were alarmingly frequent. Due to the size and construction of the frame, a woman could not quickly remove her burning clothes. She found herself in a real fire trap, from which there was almost no chance of escape. Newspapers of the time are full of reports of tragic incidents in which high society ladies suffered terrible burns at balls or even in their own homes. Thousands of women suffered because of this fashion trend. The crinoline became one of the most dangerous items of clothing in history. Despite the obvious danger, women did not give up crinolines. Fashion was stronger than fear. Refusing to wear a crinoline would have meant social isolation, an admission of being old-fashioned and lacking in taste. This trend once again demonstrates how women's fashion prioritized effect over safety and common sense. Women's bodies once again became a testing ground for risky experiments. Their lives and health were an acceptable price to pay for conforming to an aesthetic ideal. The crinoline, like the corset, physically restricted women. It dictated a certain type of movement in a certain manner of behavior. It was yet another way to control the female body, turning it into an unwieldy but beautiful object. The design of the crinoline also created a certain distance between women and the outside world. They were confined to their own cage, beautiful but isolating. This emphasized their detachment from real life. Eventually, fashion changed, and bulky crinolines were replaced by narrower silhouettes. But this trend left a dark mark, serving as a reminder that the pursuit of beauty can have tragic consequences. It was a symbol of an era in which women had to shine, even at the risk of burning up. Long, thick, shiny hair was considered the main adornment of a Victorian woman, her crown. Caring for it was a complex and laborious process, surrounded by many rules and prejudices. However, the methods of this care were often not only ineffective, but also harmful. Washing one's hair was considered a harmful procedure that should be done as infrequently as possible, sometimes no more than once a month. It was believed that water and soap weakened the hair and could lead to colds and other ailments. Instead of washing, dry brushing was practiced. When it came to washing, very aggressive substances were used. One of the popular shampoos was a solution of ammonia, or ammonia spirit. It really did degrease the hair well, but at the same time it dried out the scalp and damaged the structure of the hair itself. Another common remedy was borax, the sodium salt of boric acid. It was also diluted in water and used to wash hair. Like ammonia, borax is a strong alkali and has an extremely negative effect on hair and skin. After such aggressive cleansing, hair became dull and brittle. To give it shine, various oils and pomades were used, often with a very thick and greasy texture. This created a vicious circle. Greasy styling products required aggressive cleansing, which in turn damaged the hair. In addition, there were many dubious recipes for hair growth and strengthening. They could contain the most unexpected ingredients, the effectiveness and safety of which had not been tested by anyone. Women trusted the advice from magazines and grandmothers' remedies, risking the health of their hair. The complex hairstyles that were in fashion also did not contribute to hair health. Tight buns, braids, and the use of hot curling irons led to damage and hair loss. But beauty demanded precisely such hairstyles. This aspect of Victorian life shows how far the ideas of people at that time were from modern concepts of hygiene and care. It also demonstrates how strongly the desire to conform to the ideal forced women to resort to strange and potentially harmful procedures. Hair was an important part of a woman's identity, a symbol of her femininity and attractiveness. Therefore, women were willing to do anything to preserve and enhance this asset. Even if the methods chosen were questionable, they became hostages to yet another standard of beauty. Thus, even in such a seemingly harmless area as hair care, we see the same trends at work. Women had to sacrifice their comfort and health in order to conform to the image imposed on them by society and fashion. Although hair dyeing was not as widespread as it is today, it did exist in the Victorian era. Women sought to hide gray hair or give their hair a more fashionable and saturated shade. However, the compositions of the first chemical dyes were far from safe. Many early hair dyes contained heavy metal salts, such as lead or silver. These substances reacted with the sulfur in the hair to create a dark pigment. The effect was long-lasting but extremely harmful to health. As with facial cosmetics, toxic metals from the dye could penetrate the scalp and enter the bloodstream. This led to gradual poisoning of the body with all the ensuing consequences. Headaches and neurological symptoms could be the result not only of powder, but also of hair dye. Another popular ingredient was pyrogalol, which is now recognized as a toxic substance. It could cause severe skin irritation and allergic reactions. But for the sake of beauty, women were willing to endure itching and burning. In addition to dyes, various tinting lotions and color restorers were used. Their composition was also often a mystery to the consumer. Manufacturers were not required to list all ingredients, which opened the door to the use of dangerous chemicals. The desire to hide signs of aging, such as gray hair, was especially important for women. In a society where a woman's value was determined by her youth and beauty, gray hair was equivalent to a death sentence. Hair dyeing was a way to prolong one's social life. This trend shows how much social pressure forced women to fight the natural aging process. Instead of accepting their age, they were forced to mask it using dangerous products. It was yet another form of control over women's bodies. The beauty industry offered a solution to the problem, but kept quiet about its price. Women got the hair color they wanted, but along with it came a potential threat to their health. It was yet another deal with fashion in which women always lost out. Fashion dictated not only the color of dresses or hairstyles, but also hair color. Deviations from the norm were condemned. Women had to fit into the narrow confines of the ideal, and hair dye was one of the tools for achieving this. Thus, even attempting to change one's hair color in the Victorian era was risky. This proves once again that virtually every aspect of the pursuit of beauty at that time was associated with some kind of danger. Safe beauty simply did not exist. The final touch to the Victorian lady's look was fragrance. Perfumes and scented powders were used liberally to create an aura of refinement and mask unpleasant odors, which were inevitable given the hygiene conditions of the time. However, there was a hidden danger here as well. Perfume in the 19th century was a virtually unregulated industry. Perfumes could contain not only natural essential oils, but also synthetic compounds whose safety had not been proven. Some of these substances, as it later turned out, could be toxic or cause severe allergic reactions. One such component was nitromusks, synthetic substitutes for expensive natural musk. They produced a lasting and rich aroma, but also had the ability to accumulate in the body. Today, their use is strictly limited due to their potential harm. In addition, substances that are now recognized as dangerous could be used as fragrance fixatives. Women who applied perfume to their skin and clothing inhaled these vapors throughout the day. It was a slow, imperceptible exposure with a delayed effect. Scented sachets placed in linen closets may also have contained questionable ingredients. Constant skin contact with linen impregnated with these scents could cause irritation, but a pleasant smell was considered an essential attribute of a true lady. This trend completes the picture of the total artificiality of the Victorian female image. The natural color of the skin was hidden under a layer of lead powder, the natural shapes of the body were distorted by a corset, and even the natural smell of the body was masked by potentially harmful perfumes. A woman had to be completely remade in accordance with fashion. Fragrance was another means of social coding. Certain scents were associated with respectable ladies, while others were associated with women of easy virtue. Choosing the right perfume was as important as choosing the right dress style. The pursuit of a pleasant scent was part of an overall strategy to create a perfect, flawless image. This image had to be pleasing to all of a man's senses: sight, touch, and smell. Women were transformed into perfect objects of consumption. As in other cases, her own well-being was not taken into account. The main thing was to make the right impression, to create the right aura. If this required the use of perfume with questionable ingredients, it was considered an acceptable price to pay. Thus, even in the world of fragrances, Victorian women were not safe. Every step on the path to perfection was fraught with hidden risks. Beauty was a war that women waged against their own nature and health, using the most dangerous weapons in the fashion arsenal. We have looked at only 10 of the most dangerous beauty trends of the Victorian era, but there were many more. Behind each of them was not just a woman's desire to be attractive, but enormous pressure from society, which imposed cruel and sometimes inhuman ideals on her. A woman's body was not her own property, but an object for fashion experiments and social manipulation. For Victorian women, the pursuit of beauty was not a hobby, but a full-time job with professional risks. Corsets, arsenic, lead, mercury, all of these were part of a daily routine that slowly but surely destroyed their health. It was a silent tragedy that played out behind the walls of ornate living rooms. The history of these trends is not just entertaining facts from the past. It is an important reminder of how social constructs and fashion standards can affect people's lives and health. It teaches us to be critical of the ideals imposed on us by society and to value health and individuality above fleeting trends. Which modern beauty trends do you find potentially dangerous or strange? Suggest topics for future videos you would like to see on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new research into the mysteries of the past.